Welcome to the April meeting of the Finance Committee. Chair will entertain a motion regarding the minutes of the previous meeting. Evelyn, thank you. Matt, thank you. On the second, any additions, corrections? There being none, all in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are carried. Before we get into the action agenda, I'd like to turn the meeting over to our County Treasurer, Mr. Swan. Mike, how are you this morning?
Good morning, everybody. I handed out a little sheet there for you. Pardon me, sir?
Good morning, Mr.
The last couple of weeks, I've been trying to figure out a way that we can, because of the delay with Westmount and the financial impact that will have, I've been trying to figure out a way that we won't bankrupt the county basically by trying to keep Westmount going for the next possibly year and a half, depending on how things work, and borrow enough money to do the courthouse expansion. And I'll be honest with you, until yesterday afternoon, I was going to stand here and say, you can't. But I think we've come up with a way to make it work, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. So therefore, I'm here to request that we do a bond resolution in the amount of $16.5 million to fund the courthouse expansion. At this point, I want a contingent upon bond counsel and our county attorney being able to get everything ready that is required by next board meeting on next Friday. There's a tremendous amount of work that has to be done. If we can't get it done by the April meeting, then May will work. I would prefer that if we could get it done in April, that would be great, but if not. Now, I'd like to go over some things here as to why I'm recommending that we go forward with this. And if you'll notice, I handed out a sheet, and the one that says Warren County Summary Analysis, and it gives three different options, three different scenarios. What I'm recommending here is, even though we're going to approve, or I shouldn't say we are going to, I said even though I'm requesting approval for a bond resolution of $16.5 million, I'm requesting that we only bond $8 million to do the addition, and then wait until 2017 to bond however much money we deem necessary to do the renovations in the building. And if you look under scenario number 2, you'll see that if the interest rates stay the same between now and 2017, we would actually save about $300,000 in interest payments. Now, more than likely the interest rates are going to go up. I mean, that's normal. If you look at the third scenario, we bumped it up by about a half a point, okay? Which means that it would break even if we borrowed the $8 million now and then waited to get another $8 million later down the road to do the renovations. I know it's a little bit of a gamble, but I think that if you look at well, let me go, before I go to that. My personal feeling is, and after talking with Jeff Tennyson and the engineers, that it's really not going to cost us $8 million to do the renovations. So if we do $6 million to do the renovations, we're obviously going to save a tremendous amount of money at that point. That's why I would prefer that we only do just enough out of this bond at this point to build the building, and then go from there to do the renovations later. Now, if you look at the third sheet of what I passed out to you, you'll see that on the top of it, it says 2015 and 2017 bonds for $16 million. What we're going to do here, what I'm recommending is do the opposite of what we normally do. In other words, instead of paying a lot up front and a little at the end, I'm recommending that we pay a little bit up front and load the back end of it a little more. And what this would do is if you look across the line at the current interest rates and borrowing $8 million in 2015, we would have an interest payment of $101,000 for this year. For 2016, we would have a interest payment of $202,402. Now in 17 is when it really starts to kick, because that's when we need the extra money for the renovations, and obviously the interest rates are gonna go up, and that's when we're gonna start seeing that $647,000, and then go up into the $1 million range payments from that point till the end of the bond. Now, this is obviously contingent upon being able to do something with Westmount between now and 2017, which I'm confident that something will be done. And I've talked to Mr. Dusick and so forth and some of the other people, and I mean, it is still, unless the board has changed its mind about wanting to sell Westmount, I'm assuming that we're gonna, no matter what happens with the petitions in court or legislation or whatever, that we will pursue selling Westmount at some point in time. I just did a Dennis Dickinson, lost my train of thought.
Mike, just, if we could just, back up a second.
Sure.
So, the first step, which you recommend can hopefully take place at the next board meeting, would be the bonding authorization
Correct,
for the 16.5.
correct.
Just so that everyone's clear on that. So, now, assuming for the moment that we do that, then your plan would be that while you have that authorization, you believe that right now you would only draw approximately half of that for the for the new construction elements of the program, and that you would not draw some part of the balance until they were ready to move forward with the renovation program, which would not be for possibly an additional 12 to 18 months.
Yeah,
Is that
well, my understanding from talking with Jeff about the plan, or I mean, the schedule here is that they wanna do the new addition first, and get that completed, so that people can be moved over there, and then start the renovations in this building to do everything here. So I'm looking at this saying, well, if we're not gonna do that for 18 months or 2 years, all right, why am I gonna sit on $8 million if we took the whole 16 million and make maybe 1.5% in the bank and have to pay 3% for it to keep it for the next 18 months to 2 years? To me, that makes absolutely no sense, to sit on that kind of money and lose interest on it every year.
Fred?
Yeah, I guess my question is why we're not thinking about doing bond anticipation notes as we go? I mean, that's the way many of these projects are done, so then you're only borrowing what you need as you go, and then finally you issue the serial bond.
By the time we get done with all of that,
Yeah.
I think we're gonna be better off financially doing it this way.
Because you're assuming that the interest rates are gonna go up substantially.
Yeah.
Bud?
I'm concerned about cash flow.
That was my huge concern.
And I know that you send us this information, but I just don't memorize it, you know? By 2019, are we gonna have enough long-term debt paid off so that $1 million isn't gonna be a...
Yes,
you know,
yeah. What we're seeing is that the debt service is gonna go down over the next few years. We're not gonna totally cover that with the decrease and adding this, but if we upfronted right now $16 million and said, okay, we're gonna do it the way we conventionally did things, which is start high payments and go down, we would have a little over $1 million payment coming up next year, which we really, if Westmount is still on us, that's gonna give us a real tough cash flow situation. And I guess I need to back up just a hair. We did an analysis, worked with Paul's office and my office and looked at this, and by the year 2018, the projections that we blow out there, if we still have Westmount at that point in time and borrowed enough money to do the additions, our fund balance would be around $7 million, maybe, and that we can't do. There has been, my hat's off to the Board of Supervisors and everybody for the last 5 years, 6 years, have really done a tremendous job to bring Warren County financially back from the brink to get us to a point where we're in good shape. We're not great, but we're in good shape. And I don't wanna see us going forward trying to juggle 2 balls up in the air and screw up that good work that's been done and knock us down to a $6 or $7 million fund balance, which means I'm out there borrowing money for making payroll, and that's never a good situation.
So if you could, Mike, the point at which you actually lock onto the interest rate is when you sell
Yeah,
the market the bonds?
market the bonds, yeah.
When you market the bonds.
We're projecting that in the 1st of June, but that, I mean, that's just a projection date for right now, and that's, the fiscal advisor went through the interest rates and figures that that's, you know, we're gonna still be under 3%, even in June. The information that I'm seeing now and what he was telling me yesterday is they're not anticipating any major change in the interest rates until probably into 2016 sometime. There's gonna be some minor adjustments, but it's not gonna be anything major until 2016.
So, but I think what's important for the supervisors is that if we authorize the borrowing, this month, and then we can make a June market.
Yes,
If we do not authorize the borrowing this month, if we authorize it the following month, or 2 months down the road, then we're pushing that much further into the year.
yeah.
And we would achieve whatever rate the market had for us at that moment in time.
Now, the other thing is as far as the 8 million goes, I need a little bit more input from Jeff and the engineers to make sure that if we do 8 million, that's gonna be enough to cover the cost of the new building, or the addition, however you wanna call it. I mean, if we're gonna knock this down, I gotta make sure that we're getting enough money out of the box to cover this. I don't want to be short. I don't mind being a little over, but I don't wanna be short.
Well, to that point, are you saying that the number that we might see at the board meeting could be 16.7, 16.750?
No, I don't think so. I think I think the 16.5 is the absolute max, and I think that, I can't anticipate it ever going over that. My gut feeling is, looking over everything, that we're gonna be under that by quite a bit.
Good.
But I wanna make sure that I don't wanna do this twice, okay? Let's get the resolution done, put the ceiling up there. We don't have to go for 16.5. As long as I'm authorized to get it that much, I can work anywhere underneath that level. What I'm worried about, or I shouldn't say worried, but what I need to know a little bit more about is what they figure the actual cost is gonna be for the new construction, so that we make sure when we bond it, we've got enough. If it's 8 million, then we bond 8 million. If it's 8.5 million, then we would bond 8.5 million. If it's only gonna be 7.5, we would bond 7.5. See what I'm saying?
Mr. Dickinson?
I have two things. We recently let out our Gateway project, just under a $7 million project. We had 7 bidders. 3 of them were $1 million under the estimate. $7 million. Second thing is, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize to 16.5.
We have a motion from Mr. Dickinson to move forward with the treasurer's plan bill. Second by Mr. Kenny. Further discussion, Evelyn?
No, I was just moving.
You were gonna move it. Any other questions, comments, concerns from the committee or any of the supervisors in the room?
Before you,
Mike?
I just wanted, if Martin, could you just chime in here a little bit on where you think the possibilities of us getting to next Friday's board meeting are?
Yeah, I think, so the motion is to advance the serial bond resolution for the Board of Supervisors. And as Mike indicated in his opening remarks, I think we're going to try to get to the April 17th meeting. But there are some unanswered questions. There's some legal review that needs to be done. So should we not be able to get this done for April 17th, you would be forwarding or advancing the serial bond resolution for the May Board of Supervisors meeting.
Well, again, I think time is of the essence. Nothing affects this project financially more than rising interest rates. Paul, maybe you might want to chime in on that a little bit, just so to reiterate those. Oh, or Mike, I mean, what even a half a point means to this project.
I don't think we're gonna see a half a point movement within a month. We may see a very small movement. I mean, anything is a gamble as far as the rates go. You don't know for certain where they're gonna end up. And I'm gonna have to take a little bit of the blame for this short window here, because I was, like I said, up until yesterday, was dead set on coming in here and telling you can't do both, until I got this worked out with the fiscal advisor. If you wanna proceed, in my opinion, my recommendation is we proceed how I've just laid it out. So, if we have to wait till the May, I don't think it's that critical. Obviously, I'd love to get it done in April, but I wanna get it done right the first time.
Anything else? Well, anything? All right. Any other, Jim?
Yeah, I read yesterday at the Washington Post that, labor wages were starting to get tight. Is your plan flexible enough if we do see labor starting to go up, that we can move quicker on the second part of this?
That's strictly up to however the construction schedule goes and you know, what with Jeff and the engineers and all of that stuff. I mean, I really don't, you know, that's why I don't wanna borrow the entire amount now, because we could be sitting on, like I said, I could be sitting on $8 million for a year and a half or 2 years, and then need 8.5, or only need 6.
But if a year from now you want, and said, well, it might be wise to borrow the second half, we could
Oh, yeah.
do now.
Yes, yeah, there's no, I mean, we can do 2 borrows on this without a problem, and we can space it within a few months if we need to, but I would like to space it out as far in the future. I know it's a gamble still, like I said, on the interest rate, but I think overall projections that I'm looking at, worst case scenario is we break even.
Once, Fred?
I just want to be clear on this. The whole reason they're doing this is an assumption the interest rates are going up, because if we thought they were gonna stay flat, or they were going down, we would do what we usually do, which is buy an anticipation note,
Right.
right? So if
Yeah.
we guess wrong on that,
Yeah.
we guess wrong, but whatever you do, you could be guessing wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's a gamble either way you go, but all the industry standards that I've been looking at, and our fiscal advisor has, you know, I've spent a lot of time talking to him about this. The interest rates are an all-time record low. Let me see here, I think I got this. Yeah, in May of 2014, the rates were like 4.3%. In February of 15, they dropped down to 3.25, and now it's at about 3.8. So everybody's telling me, and my information tells me that we've bottomed out, okay? I don't think we're ever gonna see anything lower than where we were at, and it's just gonna start creeping up.
Now, once you, assuming you have the authorization on the 16 million, and you'll do the marketing of the first 8 or so, and then you'll judge the next 8 according to the timeline. Does, nothing would prevent you from doing a bond I don't even know if it would be a bond, or a ban or a RAND at that point. If you had authorization for the additional 8.
Well, I mean, we could look at that in a couple different ways at that point, depending on where we're at with the interest.
Right.
And how much money we need. That's why I'm really recommending that we only take as much right now as we need to build that building, because in 2017, we don't know exactly how much we're gonna need, and we don't know what the market's gonna actually be. So, that's why I wanna just kinda just say, wait, let's just get what we need to build the building, and then in 17, figure out what we need to do.
Right, but I mean, I was trying to address Fred's point, that I think that would give us some flexibility on the second half of this.
Oh, yeah,
Second
absolutely.
leg of this, at that moment in time, we would, Martin?
Mr. Chairman, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the serial bond resolution would incorporate those options
Yes.
into it. So
Yes.
that if we decide to go in one of those directions, we can employ one of those options.
Absolutely.
So we'll give ourselves the authority to do so. We may
Yep.
not do so, but we'll have the authority to do so.
No, and that's one of the reasons, like I said, you know, this gives us the options near the end of this, when we start the remodeling portion of this building, that, you know, we have options on how to finance it. I mean, the board at that point in time could say, no, we're not gonna do any any remodeling, nothing. I mean, I don't know what's gonna happen as far as that in 17. I'm assuming we'll continue with the project. But, like I said, I don't wanna sit on $8 million roughly, give or take now, and only make a 1.5% on it in the bank, or in a CD or something, and pay 3%, 3.8% to have that money sitting there.
Sure.
To me, that's not fiscally responsible.
Alrighty, well, we have a motion on the floor, Fred.
Just one more question. You said when you started your remarks that you figured out a way that would lessen the impact or remove the impact of not moving forward with the Westmount sale?
Well,
How-
if
how did-
we don't,
how
well,
those numbers work?
well, by lowering what we have to pay now in 2015 and 16, and going into 17, that money is gonna have to come out of our fund balance to pay, because it's not budgeted. It would have to come out of
For
fund
what?
balance. So we're talking about for this year, $101,000. I mean, and I talked with Paul and I talked with the budget officer, and we feel that that's not an unreasonable amount of money that we can afford to do, even while we're paying for the losses at Westmount, because after the end of May, we're gonna have to start substantially funding Westmount. And this way, my concern was, is if we went out and we borrowed 16 million, and we did it in the conventional way, we'd have a $1.5 million payment coming up next year. And if we still had Westmount at that time, that would be devastating to our fund balance, having that 1.5 million plus whatever deficit we're having to deal with at Westmount, and that just compounds itself going forward. And like I said, as we look into 2018 on those projections, we're gonna knock our fund balance down to a point where we're in dangerous territory.
What are you projecting the impact is of not selling Westmount on
About $1 million a year.
$1 million? Okay.
Isn't that where we were at, Paul, when we talked about that?
Yes.
Alrighty. Frank, we're good?
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Yeah, I talked to, Mike and Paul, and, well, you know, obviously there's an impact, but, the impact's minimal in my opinion until 2019. There's impact before then, but that's when we have.
I mean, I was just trying to figure out a way that we could do both, and, you know.
Very good. Very good, alrighty. Well, we have a motion to move this along to the board. There being no further discussion, we're ready for the question. All those in favor of the motion as specified signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is carried. Thank you, everyone. Mike, thank you very much. Good job.
Thank you.
Action item, 3-1, request for transfer funds attached for committee approval. Chair will entertain a motion regarding this item. Evelyn? Bud, thank you. On the second. Any discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor of item 3-1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 3-1 is carried. Item 3-2, a request from the Treasurer's Office. We have already heard from the Treasurer. Referrals from the County Facilities Committee, Airport, request to increase capital project H3039550280, runway 1-19, environmental assessment and preliminary engineering in the amount of $30,000, with the source of funding to be a transfer from budget code A9950910, transfers capital project. Chair, I'll entertain a motion, brings this to the floor. Mr. Merlino, Mr. Dickinson on the second, thank you. Discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor of item 3-3 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution 3-3 is carried. Item 3-4, referral from the Criminal Justice Committee, assigned counsel, request to amend the 2015 county budget to reflect the receipt of unanticipated revenues and appropriations in the amount of $51,736 for grant funding provided by the Office of Indigent Legal Services. Chair will entertain a motion regarding item 4. Mr. Dickinson, Mr. Taylor on the second, thank you. Discussion? There being none, all those in favor of item 4 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 4 is carried. Item 5, referrals from the Health Services Committee, Office of Community Services, request, item A, 5A, request to amend the 2015 county budget to reflect the receipt of unanticipated revenues and appropriations in the amount of $25,000 in relation to funding received from the New York State Office of Mental Health for expansion of home-based crisis intervention services for children, youth, and families in Warren, Washington, and Saratoga counties through an agreement with Parsons Child and Family Center. Chair will entertain a motion regarding 5A.
I'll move A through E.
We have a motion from Mr. Kenny to move items 5A through 5E. Do we have a second to that motion? Mr. Sokol, thank you. Discussion. There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the motion to approve items 5A through 5E signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 6, referral from the Public Works Committee. DPW request to increase capital project H333.9550 280 Valley Road over Patterson Creek in the amount of $1,845,500 to cover the anticipated local match for construction and inspection services, with the source of funding to be $1,476,400 federal share, $230,000 New York State Marchicelli, and $139,100 to be transferred for budget code D9950-910 transfer capital projects. Chair will entertain a motion regarding item 6. Mr. Merlino, Mr. Dickinson on the second. Any discussion regarding this item? There being none, all those in favor of approving item 6 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 6 is carried. Item 7, requests items to be discussed by the county administrator. Journal report identifying transfers authorized by the county administrator. Do we have the report?
It's attached.
Item 7. It's attached as item 7. Do we approve that, or that's just received and filed? That's just received and filed. 7B, request to appropriate funds in the amount of $49,000 from the Vehicle Reserve Fund A896.00 to budget code A1165-230.1, District Attorney Auto Equipment Reserve $19,000, and budget code A6510-230.1, Veteran Services Auto Equipment Reserve $30,000 for the purchase of vehicles. Chair will entertain a motion regarding item 7.
Mr. Chairman, I think the chairman had a question on the last one, and we kind of missed him.
I missed him. I'm apologize.
I told Doug, don't feel like going right.
I'm just apologize, Mr. Chairman. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I just was looking at those transfers, Paul, and it just seems like this early in the year, but I looked at a lot of the ones from the Office Emergency Services. It's just grant funding from the regular point into grants.
Which office?
Emergency
Emergency Services. There's a lot of those 4 or 5.
Yeah, that's grant funding, for the purchase of radios, and it was budgeted, those were budgeted in the wrong code for that grant, so that needed to be switched around.
It just seems like a lot early. I mean, we usually get them late, but it seems like we're doing a lot early.
Well, the budgets are very tight, and what they're doing is moving money around between their budgets, and then some, like, well, I'll give you an example. Westmount, for instance, there's a number of them for Westmount, and that's like attorney's fees. We had to move money from one account to another to cover $12,000 in attorney's fees. So
It just seemed early.
yeah,
Any transfers.
like I say, I think a lot of the budgets are very tight. You look at health services; they moved $4 from supplies to subscriptions because they didn't have enough money. It's just a function of our budgeting. I guess I'd rather see this than have them have so much money in their budget lines that they have all kinds of money left over at the end of the year. So what they're doing is when they give us their estimates, they're making them very, very tight, and then they know that we'll give them the latitude to move money between the lines if they need to.
Alrighty. We run 7...
Yes, and we need a motion.
For 7B. Alrighty. Chair will entertain a motion regarding 7B. Evelyn, thank you. Edna, on the second. Any discussion, questions? Ready for the question then. All those in favor of item 7B signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 7B is carried. Okay, review of the draft credit card policy. Paul?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I had sent out on Friday, ahead of the agenda that you got on Monday, the credit card policy, because I did want to give you time to go over it. The backstory on this is that when you authorize the P cards, and then subsequently authorize us to use the P cards in lieu of the county credit cards, I began the process of setting all of that up. And as I started to set it up, one of the things that I did was to go back and look at what the authorizations were, because I wanted to make sure that I was distributing the cards correctly, making sure everything was handled correctly. And as I started to go back through our policies, I found that our credit card policies really, there was not a standard credit card policy. There were some practices that were employed There were some resolutions that gave some guidances, but nowhere was there a comprehensive policy that actually took you right through the whole process. I felt that in view of the fact that we were setting up the P cards, I like to do things right when we set them up. So I said this is a good time to make sure that we have everything in writing and everybody understands exactly how we operate with credit cards. And so what I did was I got what the county's practices were, set that forth in writing, and then modified it to what the last resolutions were on the P cards, but then also went back around with the treasurer's office, the clerk's office, the auditor, Joanne in my office, and said, okay guys, this is what we're doing. Do we have any suggestions of, is this the right way to do it? Should we make improvements, et cetera? So what you have before you then is a policy that, number one, had its origins in what the county was doing, but has been updated to make some improvements, and has also been updated to include authorizations for the P card. Now on the P card, I've also taken the liberty to even go further than that, just so you know. Your last authorizations for the P card were to allow us to have up to 5 accounts, and you had Cargill in your resolution as one of them, for instance, for salt. Cargill we no longer do business with, so I said, okay, right away I need to get rid of Cargill. So I just said, okay, we have 5 now. And the other thing I found out in here again, setting it up, was the amount we spend on salt in 1 month, I was told, was $150,000. So I needed to have a card that would get us up to $150,000 for the month. Otherwise we couldn't charge all that to the card and get the benefits of the P card. So those were a couple of the changes that I made right off the bat. So this is different. The credit limit is it's on the second page, number 6. You'll see it is much higher than what was originally for the cards. The other thing I did was I wanted to have some accountability and controls in terms of the cards. So we developed a number of forms that are attached to the back, which require people who are card holders in the county. These are departments that are allowed to use credit cards or actually hold credit cards, actually have to sign off, acknowledge the policy and sign that they got the cards, and you'll see in the policy they're under certain obligations on how they deal with those cards. The other thing I did, which I think for the future will be a lot easier, is that the essence of the way we do business and authorize is set forth in the policy, but I realized that the issuance of cards, the amounts, the purposes, and things like that could change. So what I did is I developed a Schedule A so that in the future, if we have to make changes, we can just all refer to a Schedule A and say, here's essentially what we're doing with these credit cards. And in fact, if I could, I'd bring you right to Schedule A, because I think that's probably one of the most important parts of this policy in terms of who has what for what reasons. And you'll see that under Schedule A, which is several pages down, it's probably 7 or 8 pages down here at the end of the first schedule of several schedules to the policy. You'll see that we put underneath there that there are 3 cards in the name of the clerk of the Board of Supervisors, and that is for travel and lodging and general use with a credit limit of $10,000. Now this is historically what we've done. We've had 3 in the clerk, and I like that format because any employee or department head can go to the clerk, sign out the card, go on their trip, and they've got the credit card. And so we're really not inventing the wheel here. There's nothing new. This is the same as what we have been doing, only now here it is, laid out in black and white. And then the policy, as I mentioned, has a lot of more controls, though, in terms of what the clerk of the board's obligations are and how the flow of and how the accounting mechanisms work. There have been 2 credit cards in the name of the sheriff. Here again, nothing new, but we listed them. There's been 1 credit card in the name of the superintendent of the Department of Public Works for eBay. Nothing new, same thing we've always done. There's 1 credit card in the name of the purchasing agent for eBay only. There again, the same thing as always has been. The new item, as I mentioned earlier, is E, where we're allowing what we call up to 5 ghost cards. Ghost cards mean that we're not going to have an actual physical credit card, but rather we're going to use a credit card number with one of, or it could be up to 5 vendors. And you'll see there that they're individually for use with high volume vendors as selected by me as county administrator, with 4 cards to have a monthly credit limit not to exceed 15 and 1 card to have a monthly credit limit not to exceed 150. The purpose of the 150, as I mentioned, was to cover the salt. So what we would do
is we would set up an account with the salt provider, and all the charges for the salt that the county uses would be assessed against that account, and then there would be, if you go through the policy, you'll see there's a complete, payment routine, audits, and everything else that we follow for that. And then, I did one step further, is down below the items that are listed, we identify the use of credit cards for travel and lodging shall be for the purposes as set forth in Schedule D, because I wanted everybody clear on what travel and lodging meant. And then we also explain what the use of credit cards for general purposes are, so that people here again are aware of what they can be used for, and also what they can't be used for. So we have a great deal of clarity, more so than we've had in the past. So I'm certainly recommending this policy to you. I feel that this is going to bring the county forward, and certainly significantly, in terms of, one, having a comprehensive written policy, and secondly, giving us some very good guidance and having some standards of accountability as far as the use of the cards go.
Is there any action you require here, Paul?
We would need this approved by the full board ultimately,
By
Mr.
the
Chair.
full board. What's the pleasure of the committee? Evelyn?
I've read this one too. I thought this was a very good policy. I'm glad you explained the ghost cards, because I was a little confused as to what that was. That was one of my questions. The only other thing I had was on the Schedule D. I'm looking at it. We have it listed as Jones. If we adopt this with Jones' name on it, are we going to have to come back next month and change it when Amanda comes in, or is that something that can be?
That's a good catch. We should really list it as the clerk of the board instead of the name.
Okay, that was my only other thing. Otherwise, I'd make a motion that we adopt this.
All right, we have a motion to adopt it with the change as specified. Mr. Sokol on the second. Thank you. Any further discussion? There being none, we're ready for the question. All those in favor of approving the credit card policy and moving along to the board signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Our request item to be discussed by the county attorney, Mr. Afterdew, to address the committee regarding funding for the legal defense of the Gillette matter. Mr. Afterdew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You'll recall at the end of last year, early part of this year, we discussed that I would be retaining the law firm of Lemire, Johnson & Higgins as special counsel to represent the county in the state court proceeding that has been commenced by Mr. Jack Gillette against Warren County. That's been pending for some time. I represented the county in that proceeding for a considerable period of time. There's a federal court proceeding that Mr. Gillette has commenced as well. The law firm of Lemire, Johnson & Higgins is representing Warren County in that proceeding through NYMIR, but it was my recommendation that we retain Lemire, Johnson & Higgins for the state court proceeding as well. I've done so. I have an outstanding bill from them for the month of February 2015, which I do not have money in my account for, and I also requested and received a fee proposal from that law firm for necessary funding for the work that they're doing. It's my conclusion, based upon what I have outstanding to them and based upon the foreseeable future needs up to trial, so not including trial, that I am going to request funding in an amount of $35,000 to be transferred to county attorney for legal fees from a source identified by the county administrator.
He left the easy job for you, Paul.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think there's only one source, and that would be the contingency fund at this point. Fortunately, we have not tapped that very much this year, and there certainly is plenty of funds there.
And this would meet with your approval.
Yes.
Very good. Well, that's the issue. We have outstanding legal fees and an estimate going forward to the point of trial of an additional $35,000 that would be needed, and it's the administrative recommendation that that money would come from the county's contingency fund. What's the pleasure of the committee?
I'll move it.
Moved by Mr. Monroe, seconded by Mr. Merlino. Any further discussion? Mr. Dickinson?
How much have we spent so far?
We paid for the month of December 2015, we paid $4,902. In the month of January 2015, we paid the sum of $7,938. So we paid over, well, I guess we paid close to $12,000 at this point in time. That does not include the February billing. So this is an expensive endeavor.
What about your time that you've put in? I mean, what kind of figures are we looking at for your time?
Well, I don't keep track of my time, but even though even though Mr. Johnson is representing the county in this proceeding, I still spend a considerable amount of time on these matters. But I don't have an hour amount. I don't have, if I converted that to dollars, I don't have that, what that would be.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, my point here is that we have recently spent $50,000, plus we've paid Martin's salary for a number of years in this thing. The whole thing was unavoidable, totally unavoidable. And I think it just points out the shortcomings of making that kind of irrational decisions to do something like this to a private individual by the county of Warren. And it's just unnecessary, and it's galling to me that we have to pay this much money now after all this time in court. It could have been avoided right from the get-go. And I think we need to, at some point in time as a board, revisit that situation. And I think we need to make some recommendations to county personnel about how those situations should be handled in the future.
Anyone else? Mr. Sokol, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. And that doesn't include trial, you said, right? So trial moving forward, we really don't have a...
Yeah, I don't think we'd have a trial. It's unlikely, Supervisor, that we'd have a trial in 2015. It's possible, but should the case go to trial, we'll have to revisit the funding, yes.
Alrighty. We have a motion on the floor in a second. There being no further discussion, are we ready for the question then? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Mr. Dixon, opposed. Motion is carried. Finance Committee's action is required on the following items as approved by the Personnel Committee. Personnel agenda items 2, 3, 4, and 5B. Chair will entertain a motion to approve. Evelyn, thank you. On the second, Edna. Thank you, Edna. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And we also have to act on a resolution for Westmount, which created a new position and deleted one other. That was acted on at personnel. Mr. Taylor, Mr. Dickinson, just for the committee, can you just give the specifics on that?
At the Personnel Committee, the Human Resources Director discussed a position creating and filling a Health Facility Office Records Specialist number 2, grade 14, and deleting Health Facility Keyboard Specialist, grade 5.
Very good. Alrighty, we ready for the question then? All those in favor of the Westmont resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is carried. Is there any other business to come before the board? The committee, rather. There being none, a motion to adjourn. Mr. Kenny, Mr. Merlino, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, John.